people. Welcome back to another episode. I'm very excited to get started and having a catch up conversation with somebody I call my but somebody I
Yeah.
know who has so much wisdom. And so, as I am coming back for this new season, I've shared previously that this is just a season of figuring it out. Like, we don't got it all together. We don't got the wisdom, but I'm leaning on my community. I'm leaning on those who are closest to me, and we just gonna talk about life and figure life out together.
Hmm.
So our grounding scripture for today is coming out of Psalms 40, 1 through 5, and it says, "I've waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and he heard my cry. He lifted me out the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. He put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God. Many will see and fear the Lord and put their trust in him. But blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, who does not look to the proud, to those who turn aside to false gods. Many, Lord my God, are the wonders that you have done, the things that you have planned for us. No one can compare with you. Were I to speak and tell of your deeds, they too would be many to declare." So my thought for
Amen.
today is,
Amen.
amen. My thought
Yeah,
for
man.
today is that's cute of, we're gonna tell of his goodness. That's cute. We know you got the plans for us. But can we talk about that mud part? Can we talk about when we just ate out the mud yet and it's
Hmm.
dirty and it's slimy and we feel stuck. So today I have a wonderful co-host, my Unc CJ Jackson,
And the
uh,
building, and the building.
in the building, a Milwaukee native, a husband of 10 years. He is a girl dad to two beautiful daughters, and is currently the
Hmm.
Associate Director of Residence Learning at UNC Chapel Hill. Go Tar Heels, hey now.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I had the privilege to meet what I call my at NC State, and I was in several money situations there, contemplating all the
For
things
real.
as a new grad, as a new professional. And so he definitely became family, eventually became my supervisor at one point, and genuinely helped me as I was navigating being a professional and out of the mud in that situation. So welcome to the podcast, Unc. How you feeling?
I appreciate it. It's good to be here. It's both an honor and a blessing to kind of be a part of this. I had an opportunity to kind of see the things that you've done to this point, and very excited for you to be able to kind of put this out in the world and bless people in the way. We know that podcasts and different media forms like this are what people are turning to
Hmm.
kind of get that guidance and different things of that nature. And so very, very excited to be here talking about how we navigate getting out of the mud or staying in the mud or whatever it may
Whatever
look
they
like.
said, whatever life is. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. This podcast almost just went on and called it quits. It's a lot of work. I definitely
Mhm.
underestimated it, but I do enjoy the beautiful stories and testimonies that people have. And I
Absolutely.
also love being able to document that for not only me, myself, but for my future, generation, for my kids, for their kids, to
Hmm.
be able to captivate like that moment, the things we were going through in the moment. So I'm excited
Absolutely.
for you to be on the podcast, and
I'm
for us to
excited to be here.
reconnect. I love it. So you,
Absolutely.
sir, we have so much to catch up on, but you, sir, were recently thinking of creating an article, a whole article called
Hmm.
"Navigating the Mud," which led to all this. And so give me just a catch up, what's been happening and what led you to want to write this article? Like, what's the inspiration behind it?
Yeah, no. So my professional journey, like I mean, as you know, I spent 9, almost 10 years at NC State.
Hmm.
Um, and in higher education, that's a long time to spend anywhere.
It is.
um, and so, my experience there like ranged from extreme excitement to I'm not sure how I'm feeling about this, to um at certain points like not feeling happy and different things of that nature.
Mhm.
And so I think that into the parts of not feeling happy is where I was navigating being in the mud.
Yeah.
Um, and it came to my professional career because I definitely started to see all the great things that folks who had came in with me in my career were starting to do. Um, but I was in a unique place. Like as you said, I'm a husband of 10 years. I got two beautiful daughters. And so it's not that easy to just pick up and move because things aren't going my way. And so, yes, I spent quite a bit of time at NC State navigating a variety of different things. And I'll be honest, at that particular point in time when I was going through those things, I was telling God, like, I don't know what you got me going through this for.
Facts.
Um, but I hope that you show me soon because like I don't want to keep doing this. I don't want to keep
Mhm.
navigating this space. I want to keep dealing with the attitudes and different things of that nature that I was dealing with. Uh, and so um and so, yeah, I was there just in the mud, going through navigating like transition in leadership, navigating like personal issues and journeys and different things that I needed to gather up the courage to really move forward and really navigate. Um, I was navigating just a whole host of things, right?
Yeah.
And so, um, I think there comes a time in life when we all get in that space of like where we feel stuck in the mud, right?
Mhm.
And I think our response to how we navigate that space is critical,
Yeah.
right? Because the one of the initial options that folks have is to get out of the mud by any means necessary, right?
Mhm. That's what you're
And
hearing in the songs, the rappers and all that, you know?
mm-hmm,
I feel like that's the pathway they are
yeah,
glorifying. Uh-huh.
absolutely. Some of us like that's our natural reaction. Like this situation ain't comfortable for me. Like I gotta leave this situation,
Yeah.
right? And find me a more comfortable situation, right? And some people leave their situations and move on to a better situation. Um, but is it really a better situation, right? Because did had you had done the work that you needed to, it would be an even better situation. But sometimes we get into situations where we secure opportunities and we get into those positions and those opportunities and realize we weren't ready,
Right. Right.
right? And that's where, for me, like that's where navigating the mud for me and my journey, sitting in the mud really helped me because when my next opportunity came, like I was ready because I sat in the mud. I did some deep soul searching. I asked God and, reflected in terms of like what am I supposed to learn from this situation? Why do you have me in this space?
Mm. Mm.
And really leaning into that, he helped, guide me to, and I started to really see some things that I was really supposed to take from this situation. And so
Yeah.
um so yeah, some of us choose to run. It's a flight response. And some of us choose to stay in and fight, not from a standpoint of like fighting the mud, but understanding like what we're supposed to take from the situation, and really just trusting that the indicators are going to come when it's time for us to really we get that signal that it's time for us to move on and do something different.
Absolutely.
Um, so yeah, I think the reason behind wanting to write this article for one of our professional associations is that we see a lot of professionals, we see a lot of people in general, whether it's their personal life or their professional life or their spiritual life, navigating these same things. They be in the mud personally,
Yeah.
they be in the mud professionally, they be in the mud spiritually, right?
Yeah.
And so if I could just share a little bit about my journey, my testimony in terms of like how I learned to like really pay attention to the indicators to really help me navigate this situation. Maybe I could be a blessing to somebody else who may be in this situation, wanting to learn and navigate and understand how they get out of this space.
Absolutely. I love that.
Mhm.
Something you don't know, but I just went through we have like a women's like mentorship program at the community college district I'm at. And
Yeah.
so the whole goal of it is to prepare the senior, like future senior leaders within our organization. And so I wasn't really like feeling like doing it, but I was kind of nudged to go ahead and participate.
Mhm.
And I'm glad I did, but I feel like while I was in the program, life was lifing and I found myself in the mud. So it was helpful to have the program to kind of think things through. But then
Mhm.
I feel like it almost put me in a position where I was understanding that I could prematurely move up because I know it's possible, or,
Mhm.
I could stay where I'm at and be developed. And so at the same time, my husband decided he wanted to pursue entrepreneurship full time while I was pregnant.
Mhm.
And I said, wait a minute, Lord, this is a sticky situation. This is not how I imagined this to go. We did not write this story like this. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, this last like year really has been a season of feeling like, what do I do? Like, do I, you know, move on to the next role because, I feel like this is what I need to do. I need to, by any means necessary, this is how we're going to get it. So we still got a roof over our head.
Mhm.
Or do I trust the process and say, well, that's his journey. This is my journey. This is where I'm at. But then at the same time, I started to feel like, no, maybe I am outgrowing this role. Maybe this is where I'm going. So how do you, well, in your experience, when you've been in the mud, when you feel like you're seeing both sides, where this tension of, I need to get out by any means necessary, but I also want to stay. How do you differentiate the two between, I know that this is a time where I just need to learn the lessons, versus I'm in the mud and I recognize I'm in the mud, but I know that I'm ready now to get out of the mud.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I just started looking for signs, right?
Yeah.
And so, whether it's positions posting or opportunities posting, at my current institution to continue to do, the things that I love, like, Maya knows this, but, I pretty much at NC State helped build, a Black male live and learning community from the ground up, right?
Yeah.
And so, uh, not only at NC State, but regionally and across the nation within housing, like that had became my niche, right?
Yeah.
Like people knew me as somebody that was an expert for really how to develop strong infrastructures for living and learning communities like that. And so I had a lot of passion and desire to continue to do that work. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but um, you know, going back to your question, I think it was just more so looking for the signs that um, that there's something greater for me to do.
Yeah.
And I think I'm not ashamed to say, but I think that became a little bit more clear to me in therapy,
Yeah.
and being able to talk to my therapist, who was also um, who values faith, is a believer, and was kind of really helped me talk through, like, hey, I know that this is a place of comfort for you, and maybe that's why you don't want to leave.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe you destined to do stuff that's greater than what you focusing on right now.
Yeah.
More specifically, she told me, she said, God is telling me that you're gonna be a leader of men,
Mm.
right? And that you shouldn't limit yourself in terms of what that scope should look like,
Mm.
right? Um, so I'm like, okay. I said, come on, preach to me in this little therapy session, right?
Amen.
Yeah. But I'm just looking for those indicators, right? Like just like, you know, I don't believe in coincidence. I believe that things happen for a reason. And so um getting the phone call that a job was getting ready to post. The job that I'm in right now was getting ready to post right before I was getting ready to go into another job interview.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
type of stuff don't happen by coincidence,
Right.
right? Like that's a signal. I'm about to go and put all I can into this interview, and
Yeah.
right before I hop online, I get a phone call to
There's
be
another
like, "Yo,
option. Mm-hmm.
I got another opportunity for you." right?
Mhm.
And to finally, and then to ultimately go through that process and secure that opportunity,
Yeah.
it's just like, yeah, that's not a coincidence, right? So, I think it's just being patient, to be honest, like being patient, looking for the signs. One of the things that I kind of reflected on was like, being honest with myself first and foremost. Like while I'm in the mud, like, why am I here? What do I need to learn? And sometimes those things don't reveal themselves until you get out of it,
Yeah.
right? And so for me, like, a lot of what I've learned from my experience at being at NC State, like, has really come to fruition once I got here to Chapel Hill. And
Mhm.
now I was looking up to the people that was making the decisions that I was not having to make. And now I'm the person having to make those decisions. And I had some context to go to really help
Yeah.
lead people and different things of that nature. And so yeah, I think it's being patient, looking for those signs, continuing to like stay true to whatever your process is, whether it's, conversations with God, or whether you just continuing to shoot your shot at opportunities that you want to be the next one until you finally get that one. But never stop falling in love with the process of learning and growing, and just exploring, and being open to continue to make yourself better.
Yeah, that's good. I do want to go back to something you had said
Mm-hmm.
earlier. You had said that, you were realizing in your situation, looking at all of the people who were, who started off with you in the same, area that you were at NC State, and then you were kind of
Mm-hmm.
looking at their situation. And I feel like I do that often. I feel like,
Mm-hmm.
especially when I went from NC State to the community college, one, it was a completely different culture change. I mean, they were still doing paper everything. Like
Mm-hmm.
there was nothing technology.
NC State was too when I
It took
got there.
me, that is wild. That is wild. It took me all the way back. And so I was like, wait a minute now. I done seen better. There is no way this is what we're
Mm-hmm.
doing. And I started realizing, like in just different environments, sometimes you get conducive or very, comfortable with what's happening in the environment. So what was a shock to me at first, like super uncomfortable, now has become my norm, my reality. And so now it's like, okay, I figured out how to make it. We've had a few innovative moments here and there. And then once I kind of settled into my role, had everything figured out, I found myself looking at all the people I started at grad school with, and I'm looking at what they doing and what they got going on and all this, and I'm like, hold on now, wait a minute. I feel like at one point we was hitting all these accolades together, and now,
Mm-hmm.
what's going on? Like,
Yeah.
like I feel like I should be up there with you. And
No,
so
that's
to
real.
me, it's a trap sometimes that I get when I'm in that
Mm-hmm.
situation, because I'm comparing what everybody else has going on. And I'm sure they're probably in some muddy situations too. They probably have life into. They probably have, some
Mm-hmm.
tough decisions to make too. Um, but I feel like for me, sometimes that's a trap for me prematurely to want to do the wrong thing, to want to get out of
Mm-hmm.
my situation just because, like, what to say, I could do it with you too.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to fight that temptation, especially when I first moved into this role, to stay where I was at. And I do feel like there are so many invaluable skills and lessons that I would have gotten in my current situation that I wouldn't have gotten if I stayed, at a big institution and all this. Like where I'm at now, I have access to the president on a daily basis. I got access to the
Mm-hmm.
deans on a daily basis. Like I'm learning so many cross-functional areas that I wouldn't have if I would have went somewhere else. So I get what you're saying when you could see the other side of it once you're there.
Absolutely.
But that temptation of looking at everybody else's situation, like that is tough.
Yeah.
So how have you navigated, that in terms of just trusting your own process and trying not to, peek over at somebody else's garden to see what they got?
Yeah. Yeah. I think you described it beautifully. Like, and as you was talking, I was thinking about the process that athletes go through to get ready
Yeah.
for competition, right? Um, at the end of the day, you got to run your race the
Mhm.
way that you know to run it, right?
Mhm.
And the minute that you allow your focus to start peeking off at how somebody else running their race, and while you running your race at the same time, like that's when you're gonna start to hit those pitfalls. Like
Mm-hmm.
I forget Buddy name from the Olympics, but he
Noah
won the 400.
Lyles.
No, not
Oh,
no
I
allows,
was
but
like, Lord, here we go.
the the other boy, he won the 400 finals. Quincy Hall, I think his name
Oh
was.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Uh, but like, yo, like my man was like running,
He was
and
going.
about like 200 meters, his form started to fall apart, but
Yep.
he kept running, right? He ran his race.
Yeah.
And because he did his thing, right, like it wasn't the most prettiest, but he
He
got
got
that
it.
gold medal,
He got it.
right?
He was
And so,
hungry for
like,
that too. He was, I mean, his bid
yeah,
and
he was
everything.
digging. I mean, by the time he got 300 down, it started to get real ugly. Like, it
Yeah.
was like that. It was
Fly,
like, I was like,
flies are coming
okay,
out.
like, yeah, I was like, I don't know if bro gonna get it, but he just keep gaining ground, right?
Yeah.
And so, for me, like, that's to be honest, like, I go back and watch that video like probably like once a week because that's a constant reminder that
Mm.
to continue running your race by any means necessary.
Yeah.
And if you get to the finish line and you don't finish first, whatever place you finish in, like you can be proud because you did it the way that you were supposed to do it, as
Mm.
opposed to being worried about how somebody else was doing it or trying to emulate what somebody else was doing and different things of that
Mm-hmm.
nature. Um, and so for me, like that's what I just became laser focused on me, like and what
Yeah.
I can do, and just really got back to the root of me. At the root of who I am, I'm a relationship builder,
Yeah.
right? And so I started getting back to like when I started feeling that stuckness and different things of that nature. Um, I knew I needed other people to kind of help me learn or take away or at times like affirm that I was doing the right things, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that I was doing it the right way. And so um really just kind of locked in on develop and continue to develop relationships with those folks,
Yeah.
identifying who those people were, um, that can help me make sense of this space that I was
Mm-hmm.
in. So, mentors, family, friends, God, colleagues, all using all those people to kind of help me like make sense of where I'm at, to kind of help me stay focused on what my path was,
Yeah.
and what my path was evolving into,
Yeah.
as opposed to how somebody else was doing it. Right.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I'm working on and want to do next couple of years is I want to start some type of organization in
Mm.
the Raleigh Durham Triangle area, geared towards helping underrepresented um, males in our Raleigh community, um, who have a desire to go to college, understand what that process is like, right?
Yeah.
But they parents don't have the money to send them to these pre-college prep programs, or
Right.
don't have the resources, or don't know really want to go into the community and do that kind of work, create boot camps where we have different folks from different career fields and different things of that
Mm-hmm.
nature, really kind of help plant that seed and help them get ready for that next step. But that wouldn't have, I wouldn't have never arrived at that realization. One, if it wasn't for my therapist, and two, if it was for me, like looking at how everybody else was doing it and trying to emulate the way that they was doing it and not paying attention to what the plan that God had for me and what He wanted me to do.
Right. I think that's dope. I think that's definitely necessary. As you were saying that, it made me think, you know, now that you have that is a clear goal of yours, this is
Mm-hmm.
what you want to do, and I'm gonna pray over that and I believe that that's going to come to pass.
Mm-hmm.
But
I
when
appreciate that.
when that vision was first brought to you, did that scare you? Like, was there a little bit of fear or a little bit of like imposter syndrome that like, oh snap, I think this is my purpose? But obviously, right, it's so much bigger, it's so much, there's so much more breadth than what your very niche area was at first. Like,
Mm-hmm.
when that vision came to you, what was that initial reaction?
Yeah, no, I think it was motivation, right? Like,
Mm,
because at that point in time, like I was really up against the ropes,
yeah.
and on my way from a boxing analogy standpoint, on my way to the mat, and not sure if I wanted to really get back up.
Yeah.
And so uh, no, I think it was motivation, if anything. I think it was a way for me to continue to keep doing the work that I was passionate about, while at the same time do it in a different way that served a different group of people and met a different need, right?
Yeah.
And so no, I was extremely motivated by it. I thought about it a little bit more. I started to think about names for the program and different things of that nature. Share the idea with mentors that I have, and they connected me with folks who are doing similar work. And so I took a couple calls to kind of understand. People share packets and
Yeah.
information to really kind of help me like flush out the vision and different things of that nature. So no, I got extremely motivated by that, right? Because it was just like, hey, at the very least, I spend my time developing this thought process, and it don't it don't pan out how I wanted to, but what nobody can take away from me is the knowledge that I obtained about what this looks
Right.
like for moving
Right.
forward, right? And maybe that knowledge, maybe I'm intended to share that knowledge with somebody else who may be what they do, right?
Yeah.
And so just looking at every experience as a learning opportunity, again, not really believing in coincidences. Um, just believing that everything that we go through is training for the next thing.
Mhm.
And so really being passionate about locking in terms of really taking lessons away from situations as opposed to living with regrets.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Um, you had said, and I think when we were discussing this episode, that sometimes you got to sit in the mud to understand how it feels like to be clean. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like, as you were saying that, that's to me one of the signs when you know you about to start getting out the mud.
Mm-hmm.
That what felt like was impossible, or you were unmotivated, or you felt stagnant at first, like all of a sudden when it clicks and you and God are on the same page, it's like, okay, you told me this vision, now I'm rocking with this vision. What
Mm-hmm.
what feel like an impossible task, because I'm sure you're doing this all outside your hours, so you still working
Yeah.
full time, you still a whole dad, and now here
Mm-hmm.
you are trying to create this business, but for whatever reason you got this motivation to do it now, you have the energy to do it now, and now the doors and the resources are opening up one by one, and it's starting to feel a little bit easier. It's not feeling like quicksand anymore.
Mm-hmm.
um to me, I feel like that's one of the signs that you're in alignment with God, what God is wanting you to do, and you're on your way out. And that is
Absolutely.
a beautiful feeling to be in. It's rough getting there at first.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it was with this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, listen, I
Yeah.
know you told me to do this, but I'm tired. I need a nap. This ain't what this ain't it.
Yeah.
But once you start taking those first steps, and I was like, okay, this is getting easier. Like, here we are. That I think that first step of faith is all that is needed and required, and then everything else is going to fall into place. After that.
Yeah.
So I
And
think that's beautiful.
the reality is that like, you mentioned the podcast, like you just never know like what you do and how that's gonna bless somebody. And
Yeah.
sometimes you'll never know,
Yeah.
right? Um, but just knowing that, for me, like if it's like, like uh, my approach in coming to this conversation today, I'm like, yo, if just one person listen to
Mhm.
this podcast
Mhm.
and take something away and it resonate with them and different things of that nature, then it was well worth the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
To prepare, to do it, to all of that stuff. It was well worth the time. And so yeah, for me, I think it was, yeah, it's just, I mean, it's just kind of just like, just kind of being in it and really just, realizing that it's a higher purpose for everything, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to speak on of that a little bit more, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
a whole dad out here, like, and
Mm-hmm.
not just one dad. You a whole dad to multiple
Mm-hmm.
multiple children,
Yeah, not
and
just mine.
not
Yeah.
yeah, and you got some kin folk that ain't necessarily by blood, but you also taking care
Mm-hmm.
of too. So how have you balanced this, the weight and responsibility of following this, passion and purpose that you have, with also you know, doing what you got to do at Chapel Hill. How have you navigated those career priorities in that mud season or trying to get out of the mud? Because that's tough. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes you're like, this sucks. I want to sit at home. But then you got to be on when you go home at that too.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's when I was in that season and sitting in the mud, like I think that was really difficult.
Yeah.
I think that's why I think therapy helped me really um understand the strength and vulnerability, if that makes sense.
Mm,
And so um um you know my I think keeping what's first, right?
mm,
The most important thing that I will do on this earth is be a father to my daughters.
yeah.
That is the most important thing, right? Like I can fail at everything else, but as long as I succeed at that, I'm happy,
Yeah.
right? Um, and so, um, it's and keeping with that mindset, right? Like it's just more so just making sure that I had that quality time. My daughters are now getting to that age where we able to do things, and so creating those traditions and different things of that nature, and making sure that they always have that time with me, um, and different things of that nature, like the joy that I get when my daughters leave the house, or I'm getting ready to leave the house, and my daughters come to me and be like, "Daddy, bye bye. Hold on, don't
Mm,
leave. I want a
mm,
hug. I want a kiss." Right.
mm,
And so, so really just like keeping that priority
mm,
first and foremost, kind of helps like balance everything out. And that's the reason why, like at this point of my life, I know that I don't want to continue to climb the ladder too much more, right?
yeah.
Because like to get or rise to that level, like I'm gonna have to give up something, right?
Yeah.
Am I willing to give up what this position is bringing me, or what those positions is bringing me? Right now, I'm not willing to sacrifice that, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so really just kind of like understanding like where my priorities are, and but the thing first and foremost is having a strong support system at home. Like nothing moves without my wife
Mm-hmm.
and my sister who are at home. Like when I'm not at home, holding it down, helping to be a village to my daughters, helping me to be who I can be and do what I can do. Right, nothing moves without uh, the support of family and friends, and especially like close friends too.
Yeah.
Nothing moves without those folks offering that support, and being that support system, so that you can do the things that you need to do.
That's beautiful. And so, what would you say to someone who maybe has not yet identified that support system, or someone who has difficulty expressing what their needs are to that support system? Because I feel like that's a
Yeah.
big piece of vulnerability. Like, I feel like
Hmm.
sometimes part of being in those sticky, muddy situations is you're feeling like you're doing it all by yourself, or you have to do it all by yourself. I know as
Hmm.
a Black woman, we definitely take on a lot of that. Like, well, I need to do it all,
Hmm.
and, I got to put everything on my back, and I got to be a strong Black woman, But the reality is we do have people we can lean on. And if you
Yeah.
feel like you don't, likely it's because you're not asking or expressing that help. So, what would you say to someone in those situations?
Yeah. Uh, I think so. That piece that you said about like when people ask for help, I think is really resonating with me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Before like I really got to this place of recognizing that vulnerability and strength, I was one of those people where like I had the expectation of myself that I'll shoulder the responsibility by any means necessary, right?
Yeah.
And what that was doing to me was that was putting me in a place where I wasn't able to show up the best when I
Mm,
got home.
mm.
And so now I'll get to a place somebody asks me for help. I don't care what it is.
Come on
I'm gonna
over. I
think
got
of
a time, place,
I'm gonna
location.
think well, I'm gonna think of something that you can do to help me out, even if it's just like, yo, I can't think of anything that I need you to do for me right now. But what you can give me some encouragement. Like,
Mm,
give me them words of affirmation that kind of help me like push through
mm.
this whatever this season, this occurrence, whatever I'm navigating at this particular point in time. So I've learned to really value that piece of really like asking for the help, but also understanding like and trusting people, developing those relationships and entrusting people with the ability to be able to support you and help you,
Mm.
right? So I think a lot for me, I think I grew up with trust issues, not because anybody in my life significantly was like people that I couldn't trust, right? But it was more so
Yeah.
just for being the oldest, like I had to shoulder a lot of the burden, and so I didn't really know that I could challenge the process, or I didn't really know how to ask for help until I
Yeah.
got into my adult years.
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
and so um, yeah, just being able to navigate that space of learning who was those people that I can turn to, like really giving people the opportunity to allow themselves to be there for me and showcase that they can be there for me. And then as they showcase that, really just kind of continuing to lean on those folks, while also offering the same level of support for them and different things of that nature. So,
Mm.
while I was going through that season, it was people that I was calling every day on the way home from work.
Mm. Mm.
Like, fam, you won't believe what happened today. Let me let me tell you what happened today. And I need you to tell me if I'm tripping, right? And
Right.
sometimes they told me I was tripping. Um, a lot of times they was like, "Nah, you're not tripping," right? And so kind of just being in that space of being allowing people to be there for you and be
Mm.
willing to assume the risk, right? I think I seen a quote by Maya Angelou. Um, and I'm not gonna paraphrase it right, but um, she said something about like when you love and it don't work out, love again,
Mm.
right? And so
Yeah.
that's kind of where what I think about in terms of my support system. Like when I lean on folks and they don't come through for me, or they displace that trust again.
Mm.
Continue to keep trusting, right? Because um, you know, uh, God is the ultimate grace giver. Like we fail
Really.
him every single day,
What
right?
day?
And
Me? I'm every second at
daily,
this point. Like, please,
hourly,
literally.
hourly, right? Like we fail him every single day, and
Yeah.
he don't turn our back on us. So if
Mm-hmm.
if he can do that, now we can too. If Jesus can forgive the thief that was on the cross,
Yeah.
like as they was getting ready to die, then we can offer that same level of
Mm-hmm.
grace for folks too, right? I don't mean we gotta be ignorant about it, right? Like, but we can continue to like give other people the opportunity to really allow them to be there for us. And so that's one of the things that really helped me kind of get through this process is knowing that I needed to lean on my camp that consists of all those people that I talked about earlier, to really help me get through and navigate being in the mud.
Absolutely. And I will say I echo that too. I wouldn't say I'm out the mud yet. I feel like I'm pressing toward the mark. But when motherhood hit me, like being pregnant,
Mm,
like, I mean, I had a beautiful journey that I understand that a lot of people, especially Black women, they don't have the privilege of doing that. But
right.
navigating all of life while being pregnant, and then also understanding I have the responsibility of, this podcast, of all the other things as well. It was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was heavy, it was a lot. I felt like I was alone because we were in Arizona. Like I ain't got family. I don't have family out here. Like,
Same
we
here.
we really
Yeah,
out here
same
doing
here.
stuff on our own. And so I leaned on our church family. The reality of when it was time for me to come back to work, trying to figure out like who's gonna watch baby now, like what do we have going on. That was I think the first time where I had to really pray hard and fiercely and talk to God,
Mm-hmm.
like I don't have it figured out. Like, and there is a time clock. Like I'm going to work on Monday. It's Wednesday and we don't have this figured out.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times, especially growing up, I feel like I've been conditioned to when we keep what's happening at home, and we come to church, we got our nice clothes on and everything's okay. Praise the
Mm-hmm.
Lord. We blessed, right? We going home hungry, but we
Mm-hmm.
blessed when we're there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was what I think it was Jalen who was like, well, why don't we ask so and so at the church? And in my head, I'm like, wait, what you mean ask so and so? Like, I'm gonna have to let them know that we ain't got the money to do daycare. I'm gonna have to let them know we don't got the money for this. And even that was a conversation with like, can you watch the baby? Also, can you watch her dang near for free at this point? There was
Mm-hmm.
so much, I felt so exposed. I also like had to battle feelings with, just because I'm asking for help doesn't mean I'm not capable or doesn't mean I'm not a failure. But I really
Mm-hmm.
had to step outside that and understand that, maybe, just maybe, God positioned you at this church in this moment, in this time, and in this position to specifically ask for help. Maybe all along this was a setup for this, right? Like he has a bigger
Mm-hmm.
picture. To me, I'm like, well, I don't know if I could do this, but to him, he's like, no, this is literally the next move I'm calling you to do. Like that, I prepared you here this far. Ask for help.
Absolutely.
That has been very challenging. So I
Mm-hmm.
echo everything that you're saying, and I feel like I'm able to get out of the mud right now in this situation because of that. And what happened was, and looking back, on everything, the very same people we have watching maybe while I'm going to work, I'm looking forward to those after work check-in meetings now. Like when I'm going to pick her up and they're like, "Hey, how was it? How was today? How was it?" I'm looking
Mm-hmm.
forward to those. Let me tell y'all what's happening. Or even as life is getting even stickier and stickier, the wisdom that I'm gaining from them, it was actually them, the very same people who encouraged me, like, bro, like we ain't heard your podcast in a while. Like, what's going on? Like, just because you a mama now, and is that's not an excuse. And so, it was one of
Mm-hmm.
those picking up baby moments that I had. I was there for hours talking to them, and they encouraged me, like, just put it out there. Like,
Yeah.
this is just going to give you more depth to talk about. It's going to give you more experience. And also, your hunger is going to be a little bit different because, no, I can't sit on the couch and just do nothing all day. Like, you have to produce this. And so I do
Mm-hmm.
appreciate what came with opening myself up and really leaning on the support, because when I thought I had nobody, it turns out I really have an abundance of people. They just didn't realize that,
Yeah.
we needed help. They didn't realize that
No.
until we took the mask off. So it's
Absolutely,
beautiful.
absolutely, and sometimes, like, let me go back to the sports analogy, right? Like, an athlete cannot perform at their highest potential if they not acquiring the skills to be able to do so,
Yeah.
right? So, if a quarterback not throwing the ball, if a running back is not working on their agility, right? If a sprinter is not working on their strength, their speed, and all of that kind of stuff, like they not going accomplish what they want to accomplish. I don't care
Mhm.
who you are, right? If you don't train yourself, like you're not gonna be ready for the ultimate big stage, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is true in life too, right? Like if we
Yeah.
don't train sometimes God put us in situations to be able to like train ourselves. There are skills that we need to be able to develop
Yeah.
that we have not developed or worked on to the extent to be ready for the next thing, right?
Yeah.
And so if we don't work on those skills, or we don't acquire those skills, but yet we get that next thing, like we're not gonna be satisfied in those roles. We're not gonna be successful because we haven't worked and trained in a way to be able to be ready for that next step, right?
Mhm.
So so yeah, I mean, you spot on, right? I think in terms of again, it's leaning into that vulnerability, like leaning into, like, I'm a big component of community. So if people ask me what I value, especially in the workplace, is community. I can't
Yeah.
Me personally, I can't work in a place where I don't have community, right?
That
Like
part.
I'm not gonna be successful in
That
that type
part.
of environment, right? If I'm in a place where I gotta work independently and everything is transactional, then it's not the environment for me.
Amen.
Um,
Amen.
but if I know that I have community and different things of that nature, I know that there are people who care about me, both for what I bring to the professional landscape, but also personally. Like I'm gonna thrive in those type of communities because
Mhm.
I'm gonna give everything back that you give it to me. Um, and so I think it's just, again, it's, yeah, to your point, I think it's just understanding what your values are, being able to be vulnerable and really acquire the skills necessary so that when you get out the mud, uh, because so that when you get out the mud, you don't go right back there, right? Like, right?
Okay.
Because
That's
the mud
it.
ain't, to me, the mud ain't intended to be like a permanent place to stay.
Yeah.
It's a ground in which we sometimes have to go to be able to learn, but we're not supposed to operate in the mud in its entirety, right? Sometimes that's our training ground to be able
Mhm.
to navigate outside of the mud, right? And so
Yeah.
we shouldn't live in the mud. We shouldn't strive to live in the mud all of our
Mm.
lives. I don't think that that's what it's intended to be there for.
Say that again, because let me tell you, I feel like people wear that as a badge of honor. And I think there is definitely, especially now with social media,
Mhm.
there is this almost like glorification of this hustle culture. Like if you ain't running off of 2 hours of sleep, you ain't doing it right. You're not grinding right. You're
Mhm.
not this, you're not that. And there's almost this badge. I forgot what I was watching some like sports show or awards ceremony or something. I'm gonna have to figure out what it was, but they were basically I think it was a draft. There was a guy, an NBA draft or NFL draft who was getting drafted and they went to go interview his family and the reporter went to go ask the mom, like, oh, can you talk about the struggle and da 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 da, and she completely like like deflected that question, was like, no, like we came from a very wealthy background, or, things weren't easy, but no, like we're not about to paint this entire picture of struggle. And I feel like a lot of the times, like that's what everybody's chasing, everybody's want. Like, what was the struggle? Are y'all still in the struggle? Like, and we glorify that almost as if like
Yeah.
you get extra points because you are continuing to struggle and grind,
Yeah.
and we're I think camouflaging that, we're camouflaging or mistaking struggling for hustle and grind. That's
Mhm.
completely different. And so yeah, no, I feel that. Like if you
Yeah.
look back on your life and out of 28 years, 27 of them you've been struggling to eat every single day and you ain't been
Mhm.
sleeping at all. Like at some point
Listen,
you living in the mud.
you not doing something right.
Right.
Because it's not intended for you to live that way.
That
You not
part.
doing something right. Nah, but I get it. Like I think it's I think you can have an appreciation for people who have stories like that.
Yeah,
But also like be proud of your journey, right?
absolutely.
Like like a lot of my homeboys growing up grew up in single parent households. Like I
Yeah.
have an immense amount of respect, especially after being a parent now, for
Yes.
folks who have to do it alone, right? I have
Amen.
an immense amount of
Amen.
respect,
I feel
right?
like they need to be in the VIP section of heaven because
Yes, but
there's no way.
that was never my story. My
Right.
dad was there every step of the way. My mom was there every step of the way. So I'm not gonna like try to like make something seem like it's something that it's not. That wasn't my race. I'm
Right.
glad it wasn't, and I'm glad that you ran your race. But absolutely, I think it's that feeling of like folks like the more competing to be in the mud. I'm like, nah, I'm
Yeah.
personally not trying to be in the mud. I'm
Really
trying to
not trying
learn
to.
I'm not trying. I'm trying to learn outside of the mud. But sometimes being in the mud is necessary for us to continue to grow.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. So I do want to just hit on this because
Mhm.
you are genuinely one of the most like chill people I've ever known. And maybe it's changed. I don't know. Maybe your experiences in
And
the
nah, I'm
mud
still the same way.
got you on ready for people. I don't know. But when we were at NC State, like I just remember being in some of those meetings or being in some of those situations, and I'm
Mhm.
like, I'm really about ready to lose my cool. I know you didn't see this. You like, Maya, it's all right. Like, they on their own journey. They're gonna get it together. So how have you balanced, and especially when you're in this season of navigating your own stuff, looking at everybody else and what they have going on, how have you
Mhm.
balanced being chill, right? But not allowing people to use that quality or that trait about you to take advantage of you, to walk over you, or try to sway you to be something or become something that you're not while you're in the season. Because I do feel like, I mean, some seasons God is quick. It's like, okay, you learned your lesson, you out of the way. But you also got some situation where, hey, y'all been walking around in the wilderness for 40 years. And so
Mhm.
some people can take that as like, hey, I understand I'm in this mud season, I'm navigating, I'm trusting the process. Some people can take that for granted. So how have you balanced that?
Yeah. No, like I said, there's definitely strength and vulnerability, and so I think by nature, like I'm just a chill person. I think in my line of work, like you got to be cool, calm, and collected, right?
Yeah.
Because the reality is that these students is coming to our residence halls, our classrooms, and different things of that nature with situations and experiences that like me and you didn't have to experience when we
Facts.
wasn't when we was coming through school. Like like folks wasn't um attempting suicide at the rates that they is now, right?
Right.
Like and so these students is navigating things that we didn't have to navigate
Mm-hmm.
when we was coming through college. Like we could happy go luckily go to class and then come back and do our little RA programs and kick it in the halls and
Facts.
and then have to worry about some of the things that they got to worry about, especially like with um, social media is a positive thing, but it's also can be a negative too. And so just the different cultures that folks are navigating in this day and age, like, and we just don't have to navigate those things.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, I think again, I think for me it goes back to that vulnerability piece in terms of like, when we first met, I didn't lean into the vulnerability
Mm-hmm.
a little more. I I took on a lot more than I should have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but recently, like I think I lean into the vulnerability now, and so like I don't have an issue telling somebody like, "Yo, like I appreciate where you coming from with that thought, but I'm very challenged by what you just told me, and this is
Mm-hmm.
the reason why."
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I think when we are vulnerable with people, like what they do with that, how they respond to that, tells us a lot about who we are and what our dealings should be with them moving forward. Right?
Facts. Facts.
And so I saw, so I think that that's how you, for me, like that's how I've determined like what approach. Like if I come to you and be like, yo, like when you said that thing, it really hurt me, and this is the reason why. Like if your next action is to go back and tell your homies, they like, yo, like he told me that this hurt his feelings, and he was emotional, right? If that's your next thought, okay, well,
Mm-hmm.
then I know how to deal with you moving
Mm-hmm.
forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if your next thought is to like lean into that and be like, yo, let's talk a little bit more about like what caused that, and like I want to gain understanding, I apologize, whatever that may be, then that's a relationship that we can continue to develop. And so I think it's just about just seeing for me, seeing what people do with the spaces that I'm in when I'm share vulnerable moments with them. I'm not as a leader. I'm not afraid to share that and demonstrate that with my staff. Right, like
Yeah.
my my staff can probably tell you numerous times where it's been like, yo, like I'm kind of feeling some kind of way about what you just said, or like what you asking me to do, or um, but let's talk through that, right? And so I try to role model that as a leader. My supervisor role models that for me. Like she'll do something in the meeting, and then in that same meeting, come back and be like, you know what? I recognize I was a little I went in a little hard on that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's circle back to that conversation and come to a resolution.
That's
That
beautiful.
we all right. So I think it's I think it's like again leaning into that vulnerability a lot, because once you tell people, like they can't say that they don't know,
Mm.
right? But if you never tell people, they can always claim ignorance even if they know,
Right. Right.
right? And so I think that's where that vulnerability comes into play in terms of really not being taken advantage of. It told you, and you chose to can still do the things that we talked about. So that's intentional.
Yeah.
And then, all right, now I'm dealing with you differently,
Yeah.
right? Um,
Facts.
and so yeah, I think that's how I avoid kind of being taken advantage of. I think I've learned to kind of really help be honest, or will be honest with people and kind of help them understand like, yo, I'm not really picking up what you putting down. Like, help me to understand. Uh,
Mm.
I know you done heard that term a couple times. Help me to
Facts. Help me
understand.
to understand where you're coming from. I'm like, I know you want to do this, but
um,
help me understand.
yeah, help me to understand what this gonna look like. Help
I'm
me
like,
say no
Lord.
instead of say yes. I mean,
Yeah.
help me to say yes instead of help me to say no.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that's how I do it. Just kind of lean into that and be honest with folks. And if people don't do the right thing with what you have offered them and the space that you've offered them, um, to kind of continue to help support you, then at that point you got to make decisions in terms of what do you want your relationship to continue to look like with that person. And I think that that's one of the ways that I protect myself from being taken advantage of.
Absolutely. I love that. So as we close, I want to definitely take advantage of the fact that I have you here because I feel like a lot
Mm-hmm.
of my audience, a lot of the perspective I give is from a female perspective, but as
Uh-huh.
someone who is a leader among males, and all the things that we talked about, navigating the mud, leaning on your support system, being vulnerable, having the faith to trust God that you will learn things in the mud. From my observation, I'm not saying this is everybody, but from my
Mm-hmm.
observation, I feel like it's potentially easier for women to lean into that vulnerability and lean on their support system to navigate the mud. But there's a tendency for our males to not want to do that. And especially with the pressures of wanting to be a provider in the family and all the things that entails, what would you
Uh-huh.
say to that group of people, specifically to men and them navigating the mud, or any of the things that we've discussed today?
Yeah. I think to the men is just to continue to lean into that vulnerability, right? Like I think like I think a lot of people have a lot of pride about like being providers of their house, and when you talk about the provider as a very loaded term, right?
So
Because
loaded.
some people look at that as financially, some people look at that as the foundation of support that they offer. So people look at that differently, but continuing to keep leaning into that. I think for ladies, continue to just keep providing an environment where that's conducive for folks to be vulnerable.
Mm,
Like I think, my wife specifically, she does a great job of that. Like she notice I'm in a bad mood, she'll come down and check in. If it's obvious that I don't want to talk about it, she'll let me do what I need to do and then
mm,
circle back, right? Like the environment is there for me to be able to talk about what I'm feeling, and we can talk about anything. And we have had conversations about everything, right?
mhm,
We've had conversations about things that I to be frank, like my friends have told me, like, yo, yeah, I'm never having that conversation with my wife, right?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
because it's just not happening, right? And so, I think ultimately, like, people just got to continue to keep doing the work, and but I also think that we also have an obligation, and an opportunity to kind of change the narrative for our younger generation.
mm,
So, um, from some of the folks that have been living in they mind for like 40, 30, 40 years or however many years, and it just seemed like it's no hope for them. I mean, unfortunately, those folks might be stuck in their ways, right? But we have an opportunity to kind of create a different narrative for our younger folks and teach our younger generation something different, right?
yeah,
So, like, just thinking about for me in the field of education, how do I create an environment in my classroom, in my office, and the spaces that I'm in with students and staff, where vulnerability is celebrated, and uh, not humiliated, if that makes sense.
yeah,
And so just continue to create those spaces for folks that give folks that comfort to be able to and check in with folks in terms of like being able to ask the questions like how like in order for you to have an environment where you can feel vulnerable, like what does that look like? What does
yeah,
that consist of?
mm,
Because the way you do it for one person is not going to be the way that you do it for another person. And so just really being in tune with the people whose lives that you are in, to kind of check in and ensure that you understand how they want what they want those spaces to look like. I think that that's how we continue to dismantle that wall of like um, vulnerability is a weakness as opposed to it being a strength.
I love it. Love that. So as we close, so about this organization you're gonna create for
Mm-hmm.
men navigating college things, when can we see that? What we looking at? What God telling you?
Yeah. Well, so right now we in the skill development phase of it. I think I think he put me in this position to develop a better understanding of curriculum and how to build curriculum.
Mm,
Um, and
mm.
so I'm gonna be doing some of that. I'm serving on some university curriculum teams at this particular point in time. I'm gonna be going to some conferences and institutes in the next couple of months. That's gonna help me to really understand that. And then I'm gonna be able to translate that skill development over to really developing what this looked like. So not in a rush with it. I think I'm gonna start off with a small mentor program where I'm gonna take on like maybe like three to five mentees
Yeah,
from get my paperwork organization, but take on 3 to 5 mentees to kind of really like spend some time with, explore these concepts with, and different things of that nature. So, probably in the next couple of years,
I love it.
definitely taking my time with it, but also definitely want to surveil the local community and see what type of organizations are already out there. Maybe there's an organization that's already kind of in place where the the population is there, and I can just come in and really provide
Right,
like the workshop or the series and different things of that nature. So
right.
continuing to see what opportunities there are for partnership, but yeah, maybe in the next couple of years. I mean, my daughter is at that point. Both, well, one of them is in pre-K now.
Crazy. That's
Well,
crazy.
yeah, and then the other one will probably be starting pre-K in a couple of years. So I think that'll give me a timetable for them to be just transitioning out of daycare
Yeah,
and be into their school studies and different things of that nature. And so it'll give me more time to be able to kind of dedicate towards that.
yeah. I love that. I love that. Well, any lasting thoughts, things you want to share with the people before we close out?
Nah, I think this has been great. Like again, I appreciate this platform that you
Absolutely.
create to talk about these topics. Like I definitely think that is something needed. I'm definitely gonna continue to keep tuning in and different things of that nature. Happy to engage with people over social media. So I can definitely provide you with my social media handles, and if
Yeah,
folks want to contact me and continue the conversation offline, I'm happy to do that. Uh, but yeah, no, I think we got to normalize at certain points in in our life navigating the mud. I think I want, instead of people thinking about about the fact that they in the mud, I would encourage them to think about um what um what do I need to learn to get out of the mud, and avoid kind of being in these pits moving forward.
absolutely.
But really to take a look at it as a learning experience as opposed to like um, something that they should be embarrassed about or different things of that nature.
Alrighty, holy people. So that was our wonderful testimony. I think there were so many gems to take away, and just in terms of navigating the mud. And when we look back at our grounding scripture, the person who is in the mud, just trust the process and know that God is going to lift you out of that mud. That He will plant your feet on a solid ground and give you a firm place to stand. And that instead of that old song you've been singing, you will have a new song to sing about. And that He is definitely faithful, that He has a plan for you. And no, nothing can compare to the plan He has. And so don't compare what you've been going on. But also remember what Unc said, that this mud is only supposed to be like a little puddle. Okay, you ain't supposed to be swimming in it, living your best life. So let's focus on tuning into God and figuring out how we can get out. So with that being said, wonderful people, I want you to be you. I want you to shine bright, and I want you to stay holy. And if that ain't possible,
Baby, take that over, God.
take that over to God.